Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of our Dream Big, Act Small podcast. This podcast is for those of you who refuse to accept the status quo and are striving to become global and local influencers. My name is Joey Jenkins, your host, and I'm honored to have with us another influencer, Stephen Fowler. Stephen, thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, I'm sure you've heard the quote, "It's not how you start, it's how you finish." And I'm sure this quote resonates and hits home with you because while you've made a massive turnaround and have an awesome success story, your start wasn't as great. So would you be willing to just briefly share with us your background that led you to prison and kind of that process for you?
Yes, I can. I don't think there's no this specific thing that put me into my situation. I think it was a cluster of environmental factors. And it all led to me getting my ultimate sentence. But I'll probably say I will start back when my mother and my father, you have to go to parenting and how that influences a child. And both of my mother and my father were addicted to drugs. And my father died from it. My mother, she couldn't manage the home as a drug addict. And so at an early age, I was put into the DHS system and the foster care system. And I had to navigate growing up in Portland, Southeast Portland, in a foster home with emotional and psychological issues because I couldn't really connect with people. I didn't feel like there was any, I'll be honest, I was a mama's boy. So once I was segregated from my mom, I couldn't connect with people as much. And that was the start of me growing into someone that just didn't really feel loved or appreciated in this world. And so I did a lot of things to try to find those validations, and they led to negative roads. And started out with fights at school. Like I would lash out. I would cuss out my teachers, because I was acting out. I didn't know why I was acting out, but it was just my emotional response to the things, the turmoils that was happening inside. And then I got a little older and started to listen to real hip hop music. And at the time I would listen to the gangster rap of the day. And so that ideology started to fester inside of my mind. And I wanted to live like that. Sorry, excuse me. I wanted to live like that. I wanted to do the things that I was hearing, and I wanted to be, because those guys were cool. Those guys were accepted by the big populations, by the mass populations. Everyone's listening to them, and they're teaching me. They were my teachers. And so I was listening and starting to live like that, started to sag my pants, started to just be what I thought I was supposed to be. And that led to me getting involved with the wrong group of guys, the wrong group of peoples. And granted, I had a good foster mother that tried to keep me in church. And I would accredit church to being one of the key sources that got me back on my right path later in life. But at the time, I didn't really care for it too much. And I started to get involved in the gang mentality, and I just gravitated to that. And I started making decisions that weren't necessarily the right decisions.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I answered your question correctly, but I feel like I'm giving
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Thank you for being so vulnerable. You know, Brené Brown does a great TED talk on the power of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious, from your perspective, how hard is it to be vulnerable and share your story, knowing that there's judgment from society and individuals that, that are attached to that?
First off, that's a great TED talk, by the way. One of my favorites, and it taught me a lesson on vulnerability. Actually, I mean that was the purpose. But I feel like it's critical for us to, as men, as leaders, as community members, to show that being vulnerable and being able to tell your story will not only empower someone else, but it will allow them to feel like they don't have to hide they don't, I mean, that's empowerment. They don't have to hide, and they don't have to bottle up these emotions. And so I honestly, I embrace vulnerability, because I know that that's the corner front to growth, you know, and to be vulnerable and to show that you can be vulnerable and still be confident and still be aware of who you are as a person, like that shows in character. And my goal is to show other people that you can do that and be yourself and grow from it. And so, yeah, I appreciate the vulnerability lesson that I got from Brene Brown.
Oh, well, thank you for taking that lesson and running with it and modeling it
Yeah.
for others. Yeah, it's a great example you're setting there. So, Stefan, would you mind telling the audience how long how long was your prison sentence that you served?
I did 7.5 years of incarceration. Yeah, 7.5 years. 7.5 long years.
I bet. So, and what was the crime, if you're willing to be vulnerable enough to share with the audience, that led you to 7.5 years, and then maybe kind of lead that into the catalyst that began the transformation in you to become who you are today from who you were then?
hmm Well, my crime was attempted aggravated murder and robbery one. And I would say that, okay, so my crime, and then what was the catalyst? I think getting that time, by the way, never mind. Getting that time was probably, it was a blessing in disguise, because it took me out of my current situation. It took me out of that life and that negative cloud that I was living in, and it opened my eyes to other possibilities. Now, like I said, my background it wasn't the best background. I didn't have a great childhood. So I didn't have anything that I considered was mine. Like, I didn't feel like I really belonged anywhere. So once they told me that I had to leave society and go sit down, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be leaving and I'm gone from all the things that I hold dear. I didn't really have anything. So it kind of was a new start, in a sense. And I took that as, okay, this is a chance for you to really decide who you want to be. I didn't know where that was going to lead me. It could have been positive, it could have been negative. I was like, but this is a new start for you to really decide what you want to be. And very, very fortunate that there were great people that were in the facility that I first went to lead me down the positive path. And then I just seen the mentalities of the negative people, and I came from that life, and I was like, do I want to go back to that? And I chose not to. And so it was the kickstart of the people that got involved in my life, and then from the environment, for me seeing like the older guys that were actually handling their business versus the older guys that you can tell didn't handle their business at all, and they were just treated like kids still. And so it's like, I didn't want to be treated like that. I wanted to be treated like someone with a little bit of respect. And so I had to put myself in that position, and that was a jump start. It was like, let me man up and become the man that I'm supposed to be. And
Hmm.
so I started doing the things that I needed to do.
Well, I can say from the last over 3 years now of serving and working with a lot of guys and staff at McLaren Youth Correctional Facility, your name is on quite the pedestal there as somebody who has made an incredible transformation. The guys respect you like crazy. They look up to you as a role model and a mentor. So hats off to you for seeing who you wanted to be and then creating that person in yourself and doing all the hard work it takes to get there.
For sure, for sure. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So you talked about the influences prior to being incarcerated and then the influences after and the guys that you chose to aspire to be like versus the ones you didn't. Talk about the role of, the comment, who we spend time with is who we become, and the role that those influences and that people and our influencers around us play in shaping who we become as people.
Yes. So I know you've heard the saying, I'm gonna paraphrase because I'm horrible with quotes. But the if you hang out with 5 millionaires, eventually you're gonna become a millionaire. if you hang out with 5 drug addicts. Eventually you might become a drug addict. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So who you surround yourself with becomes who you are. And vice versa with the net worth, like whoever the 5 closest friends you have, net worth will resemble your net worth. And so pretty much I took that into consideration as the people that I let be in my circle, because I knew that I could easily influence myself, or I could surround myself with negative influences, and then I would see myself leaning towards that way. And so the people that I chose to be around me were guys that were handling their business as well, guys that were respected amongst their peers and respected amongst the staff, and just guys that I respected. And so, and somehow, some way, the roles became reversed. I became that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, the
Yeah.
lines blurred. I didn't even see when it happened, but it happened. And one day I
Wow.
just looked back, and I was the old guy in there, and everyone was like, "Man, you've been here for a while, and you've been doing your thing." But gradually, I was just trying to be around those guys that were handling their business, and then
Wow. I love that concept. The lines blurred. You didn't notice when it happened.
yeah,
That's exciting for people to realize that that's how transformation can happen. And it's a slow process, but it happens. And all of a sudden you're somebody that you didn't think you could be, or somebody you were striving to be that took a lot of hard work to get there.
for
That's
sure. And
great.
that's the thing. A lot of people feel like a transformation just happens overnight, and that's not how it works. Like you have to respect and enjoy the process of you transforming, and that's what I did. Like I seen it in my music, I seen it in my actions, in my interactions with people, and I was just like, wow, I've seen it. I'm gonna tell you this quick story. Like every year, on Christmas, you ever have a New Year's resolution?
Yeah.
So my New Year's resolution since 2012 has been the same. No, sorry, excuse me. 2011 has been the same. And it was, I'm going to be a better person next year than I was this year. And what I meant by that was like, that seems like really broad. Like, how do you become a better person? But I used to lash out. Like I used to have anger fits, and I would like cuss someone out, or I would physically put my hands on someone, or I would do things, and I could never count how many times on my hands, how many times I did that in a year. Like it'd be so many. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to like strategically think of how I can lessen these incidents.
Mm.
And in of 2011, um, I tried to count. I couldn't count how many it was. There was too many. And I was like, all right, next year I'm going to do less. And I remember, like, I'm talking about not small incidents, but like big enough incidents where I could decide like, okay, I can walk away from this right now, or I can continue to stay here and get angry. And those times, and it was like maybe 10 or 11 times. And then the year after that, 2012, it was like 6 times. And then the year after that, I'm telling you, and it started cutting down till 2015, 16. It was 2016. I had 2 incidences in a whole year. And that's when I really look back like, wow, Stefan, you have grown. You see what I'm saying? But it was years it took. So a lot of people were like, well, you've been this amazing, taking care of your business, but really I was just slowly trying to take away all those times that I would lash out, and that helped me in a sense. So each year I'm still doing the same thing. I'm gonna be a better person next year. Eventually I'm gonna get to 0. Once I get to 0 and I have no problems, then I'm gonna switch up my resolution.
I love it. I love it. It's good consistency. Consistency is king.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you and Noah Schultz started a
Yeah,
nonprofit called Verbal Escape to
yeah,
teach
yeah.
poetry. Well, you can tell about Verbal Escape and what your hopes and impact are for it.
Verbal escape is teaching youth how that their voices are important, and doing that through the platform of spoken word poetry. Um, I feel, I feel like that explains it right there. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of young people don't realize, like this. Here's the thing: adults control a lot of these kids' lives. I mean, we were teenagers at one time.
Yeah.
We were kids, and we didn't have, well, some people have more autonomy than others, but a lot of times these young kids, they just want to know that they're validated in what they say and what they do, and adults usually don't give them that space. And so we noticed that being locked up, and it's like, you know what, like let's create a space where these kids can be themselves and be vulnerable and just learn a skill to tell their stories in the most magnificent visual way, which is what poetry, spoken word poetry does. And it's an actual talent that can get them somewhere, and it changes the label of now they're artists. Now they're whatever they thought they were before, they can give themselves positive labels. I'm an artist. Oh, I can perform now. I can stand up on a stage in front of a lot of people. So it was more of like letting these young people realize that they can do a lot more than what they have done, and to let them know that their voices matter and their stories matter, and their stories being shared with other people will help those other people grow as well. And so, yeah. And so what we plan on doing with this is we're bringing it to Portland. We want to contract or partner with some schools or some organizations that have populations of young youth, from, I believe we said from 13 to 17 or 18 years old. And yeah, just have them diving into poetry and have them being able to write down and be vulnerable and learn a great, amazing skill to tell their stories.
Well, I love it. And I love that you and Noah both have such a powerful backstory and transformation story and platform where you're going to connect and reach them in a way that very few individuals can. So that's wonderful. Last question I have for you, I know we're short on time here, is if there's one thing that the world needs more of right now, what do you think it is?
The world needs more teachers. Our future depends on the generation that's coming after us, and where we're going, the path that we're taking our planet on. If we don't teach these young kids, these young generations, how to properly do what we failed to do or what the generations has failed to do before us, then we are not going to be anymore. And so I feel like teachers, right teachers, the proper teachers need to teach. They need to not teach, they need to teach intentionally. They need to teach with a purpose and let these young people know that you matter and you will be the generation to fix this planet, you see? And so that's why I personally feel. I feel we need more teachers because it's crucial. It is very important.
Well, I love it. As a man who is married to a teacher, I fully endorse and support your request. And I just want to thank you for the transformation you've made, the work and, years you put into it, your patience and willingness to go the slow road and choose the right path. And then your willingness to give back to society. And you are somebody who dreams big and does the little things, acts small, which is absolutely critical. So keep it up, keep doing it. Thanks for sharing your story with our audience today. And for those of you listening at home, we would just encourage you to keep being influencers in your local and global community, keep changing the world, become teachers and influencers of those around you, as Stefan has challenged us to do. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.